Pete Hegseth this morning announced that the team that was assigned to be the assassination team of President Trump that was being led in Iran has been dismantled to a permanent extent.
Yesterday, the leader of the unit who attempted to assassinate President Trump has been hunted down and killed. Iran tried to kill President Trump, and President Trump got the last laugh.
President Trump got the last laugh, Will.
That's right. So when you hear about this, and as you said, Logan, it almost seems wild to even think about, but that there was a unit within the IRGC that was given the task of retribution against President Trump, of assassinating President Trump. And that individual who led that unit is no longer on planet Earth. When you think about the scope of what the U.S. military has been able to do alongside of Israel in taking out all of these leadership positions, it takes out individuals who were directly going after the United States of America. It is also showing the American people as they give these updates why this is a necessary thing. There should not be a leader of a unit that's entire goal is to take out the sitting president of the United States, no matter whom that is. Yeah. Even if it was Joe Biden, that should not be a thing that exists.
So all of you that are complaining about, they needed to sit down more, they needed to have more conversations. What are we talking about here? Okay, they had a department of assassination, essentially, for the president of the United States. I think that justifies a lot of what was going on.
This is not a mission accomplished situation. This is simply a reality check. The combination of U.S. and Israeli intelligence and combat power will control Iran, and will control it soon. Sure, Iran will still be able to shoot some missiles and still be able to launch one-way attack drones at civilian targets, and their proxies will attempt to attack our embassies, bases, and soft targets. They are terrorists, after all, and they need to target civilians because they can't fight toe-to-toe. But we will find them, and we will kill them.
Said that Israel and the U.S. will be in control of Iran soon. That is a little bit of a different take. I understand what he's saying here. Temporarily, for the time being, we will have control over the situation going. Does that infer a little bit of Iraq? Does it have a little bit of that? But he was very careful and very clear to say this is not a mission accomplished moment. I think they're doing their best to not step in it when they know that that is in the lingering mind of anyone over 40. Everyone over 35, probably, who lived through a version of the war on terror.
Well, and I think to that point as well, what in control of Iran means isn't necessarily installing people into the cities themselves. I think what it also talks about is we already control the skies of Iran. We have air superiority. So our jets and bombers can come and go as they please without the threat of their air force and their missile defense systems taking down our aircraft. So that we're in control of the skies, in control of the land, meaning they have no more operational ability on the land, I think could also be what you read from that. But the entire way this has rolled out has been so fascinating to see the strength, the resolve of our war fighters and the administration and the generals of getting done what needs to be done. And yes, the tragic loss of 6 soldiers at the beginning of this from one of the ballistic missile strikes from Iran in Kuwait. One, as the president put out ahead of time, that is war. There is the chance that you will have tragedy on your own side. I think that was where it is limited at right now in and of itself is remarkable, knowing how strong we have gone, the quickness at which the United States and Israel have gone after Iran. Sometimes the speed can be a factor that could lead to more tragedy. And I think you are seeing the United States military in their full might doing something that all the experts that you've heard from all the time, that it'll spark a regional conflict. It'll just be so much that the United States can't even really take on Iran. And to be fair, Iran, when you even talk about this unit that was within the IRGC that would have someone who's tasked with assassinating the president, it is a different war than going after the Taliban in Afghanistan, where it is nomadic tribes and not as advanced as the government of Iran, even though they were not allowing their people to flourish. They were an established government with established military and special forces and a navy and an air force. And so this is a fighting a nation state, not just a terrorist organization, even though they are terrorist and the largest state sponsor of terrorism. So that in and of itself, being able to accomplish all this with as minimal casualties up at this point is frankly remarkable, and not something I think any expert said that we would have been able to do.
So I want to actually start things off a little differently today. Let's go to Heather, who's calling on line 3 in Minnesota. Go ahead.
I'm very thankful for the brave action the U.S. took. However, I think, when you use terms like take control, especially right after Venezuela, Trump's bragging about taking control of the oil, people suspect motives, and when a school is hit in Iran and people are saying the U.S. is taking control, that it's another oil-rich country, it's very serious, reminiscent to people that I know of Iraq. I think the U.S. needs to be careful, especially Trump and the things he said.
I understand what you're saying. She was saying she was having a hard time with this. She wasn't sure if with this war, she was happy that we took out the leadership, but when there are things like the school that was destroyed, that, of course, Iranian media has reported. There have been some investigations going on with America and Israel to figure out what went wrong there or if they were involved in it. There's not a confirmation. So I want to make sure that we paint the facts clearly, which is you are trusting the response and the statements from Iranian-controlled media. So let's just get that out of the way. Not saying it didn't happen. Clearly it did happen. I'm not sure, and it's tragic. War is tragic in general. Let's not pretend it's not. Let's not pretend that all human life doesn't have intrinsic value and that these kind of things happen. They do happen. I do think sometimes the tone needs to be watched when we are talking about this, but also remember the leadership that was in place and how horrible they are to the people, to their own people. Yes, it is a tragedy if hundreds of children died. I mean, I can't even imagine. But thousands, tens of thousands were killed only in the first 2 months of this year for speaking out. Women have virtually no rights. This is not what you think of in terms of Western society, and I want to make sure that's always clear. Now, in terms of things like we're taking control and all, that's why I brought that up. I said because it does give you that visceral response that connects it to something that we all grew up in, which was the war on terror. And you can look back on the goods and bads that came from the war on terror. I think sometimes it gets painted a little too broadly as just a negative. I think it ended poorly, clearly. But there was some good that came out of that whole situation. Not to say that there wasn't some overwhelmingly bad issues that did.
And Heather, to that point as well, I think the word control, I think, does need to be taken a little bit in the context of, I believe the Secretary of War was saying operational control, not necessarily America moving in with boots on the ground to establish an interim government or a military rule during some interim period of time. That is based off of all of the other contextual information that he's been giving. But I do understand your concern. As to Logan's point about the news and the reporting that came out of Iran about the school, the U.S. military is saying they are doing an investigation into those reports, into what happened. That does not seem that it was a deliberate target, even if it was hit by U.S. weaponry. There's also reports that it was a misfired Iranian missile defense system because they place military buildings and operations next to schools.
Yeah, I mean, if you look, it was the school was adjacent to essentially the headquarters.
Which is exactly what Hamas does. So that is, once again, using a military installation almost shielded by a school. And then if there is a misfired missile that, yes, we were doing an airstrike, they were trying to intercept it, and it hits a school. There's a lot that we don't know because of the fog of war right now. The U.S. is saying they're taking those reports seriously, and that is a tragedy. There is a tragedy when children are unfortunately caught up in war. As Logan also pointed out, the Iranians who are through their propaganda arms and saying, look how outrageous this are, they have no care for loss of life. They killed 30,000 of their own people for trying to do something we take for granted
just speak
every
out.
single day in the United States. I've sat in the room and interviewed women that were put in the worst prison in Iran and tortured for owning a Bible.
And genuinely tortured.
Genuinely
the tortured that you
tortured.
can't imagine.
For owning a Bible, and were able to get out and rescued and now have safe haven in the United States. I've sat in the room and heard their story. This is the reality of this regime. They have no respect for human life or human rights. So their propaganda can elevate it. And the only reason it works is because we do care about the loss of life here in the United States. And we should be concerned by those things, but we also should not let it completely taint what is going on.
Yeah. There are always going to be bad moments in these wars. It's just sadly the fact. We can't be naive to it. We can't put our head in the ground and pretend it's always going to work out 100% of the time. You're talking about human beings, stuff goes wrong. That being said, the overall mission is one that is looking like it's going to be very successful.